Genesis Carter, would you please come forward as tonight's guest of honor? The champagne glasses stopped mid-air. 200 heads turned, and the woman scrubbing the marble floor on her hands and knees felt her entire world tilt. Have you ever been invisible for so long that being seen felt like standing naked in front of strangers? That's exactly what Genesis Carter experienced the moment Captain Thomas called this shy girl's name, the cleaning lady nobody noticed, as guest of honor on a luxury yacht filled with millionaires. But why would a ship captain honor someone the wealthy guests literally stepped over? What secret was she hiding beneath that oversized uniform? The answer would save 200 lives in the next 72 hours. The luxury yacht. Meridian Grace was a floating palace where millionaires played at royalty. Tonight's charity gala had drawn Singapore's elite CEOs in tailored suits, socialites dripping in diamonds, influencers angling for the perfect shot. Brennan, 34 and devastatingly successful, commanded the logistics empire that made half these people's wealth possible. Soraya clung to him like a designer accessory, her laughter sharp as glass. Genesis worked in the shadows. 26 years old, thin as a winter branch, wearing a uniform 2 sizes too big. She'd learned to make herself small, invisible. The guests swept past her without a glance, champagne glasses held high heels clicking against the floor she'd just cleaned. To them, this shy girl was nothing more than scenery. Near the grand staircase, Genesis noticed a little girl crying softly, lost. She set down her cleaning caddy and knelt beside her. "Hey, sweetheart," she whispered, pulling a wrapped candy from her pocket, the kind she saved for her own daughter's video calls. "Let's find your mommy together, okay?" The girl took Genesis's hand. They found the child's frantic mother, who barely looked at Genesis as she thanked her. Nobody saw this heartwarming moment. Nobody ever did. After returning to her mop, Genesis's phone buzzed. Her daughter Maya's face appeared gap-toothed and hopeful. "Mommy, when are you coming home? I miss you." Genesis's throat tightened. "Soon, baby. I miss you too." The gala began. Captain Thomas Reed took the microphone, his weathered face serious. "Tonight," he said, "I want to honor someone most of you have never noticed. 5 years ago in a Manila harbor, I watched a young woman quietly correct a navigation chart that would have sent a cargo ship into shallow waters. She didn't ask for credit, she just fixed it, and saved 37 lives." Soraya leaned toward Brennan, smirking. "This better not be some inspirational charity stunt," Thomas continued. "That woman is here tonight. She works below deck. Genesis Carter, would you please come forward?" The champagne glasses stopped moving. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Genesis felt the blood drain from her face. A cleaner, the guest of honor. Brennan Hayes's eyes narrowed with recognition. He'd seen that name before, buried in an old personnel file. Navigation certification, officer's license. Why was someone with those credentials scrubbing floors? What secret was Genesis Carter hiding, and why had she spent 5 years invisible? Genesis's legs wouldn't move. Every eye had turned toward her. Captain Thomas smiled gently from the stage, extending his hand. "Come on up, Genesis." But it wasn't shyness that kept her head down, it was survival. The last time she'd let herself be seen, she'd been 21 in a white dress, watching her husband walk away with another woman before their honeymoon even began. Visibility meant vulnerability. Silence meant safety. Genesis climbed the stairs, her work shoes squeaking against marble. The applause was polite, confused. Whispers threaded through the crowd like poison. "That's the cleaning lady. This is embarrassing." Soraya's laugh cut through the murmurs. A maid as guest of honor What's next? She leaned into Brennan. Darling, isn't this ridiculous? Brennan said nothing. He was watching Genesis with an intensity that made Soraya's smile falter. Thomas placed a hand on Genesis's shoulder. Genesis worked on my ship years ago. She never asked for anything. But I've sailed 40 years, and I've never met anyone with a better instinct for the sea. Genesis's voice was barely a whisper. Captain, You're not just anything, Thomas said firmly. As Genesis descended the stairs, face burning, she felt Brennan's gaze following her. She'd cleaned his office 3 times a week for 18 months, but he'd never once looked at her. Not really, until now. Genesis fled to the crew quarters below deck. She collapsed onto her bunk and pulled out a small wooden box her father had carved. Inside her navigation certificates, her officer's license, and a wedding ring she couldn't bring herself to wear or discard. A knock at the door. Thomas entered slowly. You ran away. I don't belong up there with those people. Thomas sat across from her. Your father was a ship captain, Marcus Carter, one of the best I ever sailed with. He talked about you constantly. My girl has the sea in her blood, he'd say. Genesis's eyes stung. Dad died before he could see me get my license. And then my husband left me 2 days after the wedding. Said I was too boring, too quiet. Her voice cracked. I was pregnant. He never even met Maya. So you buried yourself, Thomas said gently. Became invisible. It hurts less when no one looks at you. Genesis hiding your light doesn't make the darkness safer. He stood. This voyage is 14 days. Promise me you won't run from yourself anymore. Before Genesis could answer, chaos erupted above deck. Thomas's radio crackled. Captain Reed, we need you at the bridge. The Singapore office is calling with an emergency contract revision. No one here speaks their language, and we're about to lose a $50 million deal. Thomas looked at Genesis. Didn't you study multiple languages? I learned some while working in port, but I'm not certified. Come with me now. The bridge was pandemonium. Brennan stood at the center, jaw tight with frustration. Soraya perched on a chair examining her nails. This is a disaster, the operations manager said, panic rising. If we don't confirm these routes in 10 minutes, the contract goes to our competitor. Brennan's eyes flicked to Genesis. Captain, we don't have time for... Give her the phone, Thomas said firmly. Soraya laughed. Are you joking? The cleaning lady is going to negotiate a $50 million contract. Maybe this is when the cleaner shows her tricks. Give Genesis the phone, Thomas repeated. The operations manager thrust his cell toward Genesis. Her hands shook as she took it. Then she spoke clearly, confidently, in perfect business dialogue. The operations manager's eyes widened. Brennan stared. Even Soraya's smirk faltered. Genesis listened intently, then turned to Brennan. They're concerned about draft depth in the Singapore Strait during monsoon season. They want guaranteed alternative routes and insurance clauses. She paused. I can draft the routing solution. The entire bridge had gone silent. Brennan's voice was quiet, but firm. Do it. Genesis moved to the navigation table. Within 7 minutes, she'd sketched 3 alternative routes with depth calculations, weather windows, and fuel efficiency notes. She explained everything professionally. The call ended. The operations manager looked shell-shocked. They accepted everything. Contract secured. Soraya stood abruptly. Well, isn't our little Cinderella full of surprises? But her mockery fell flat. Brennan stepped closer. Where did you learn all this? Genesis lifted her chin slightly. I have an officer's license, Mr. Hayes. Navigation specialist certification. 4 years of night school while working double shifts. My father taught me to read maritime charts before I could read storybooks. Her voice steadied. I'm not just a cleaner. I just haven't had the chance to be anything else. No one hires a single mother with no references. Brennan's expression shifted. Why didn't you apply for officer positions here? I tried. 93 applications over 2 years. No one wants to hire a woman with a 6-year-old daughter. So I took what I could get. I clean, I survive, I stay invisible. You're not invisible now, Brennan said softly. Soraya grabbed his arm. Brennan, darling, can we talk privately? Not now, Soraya. He didn't look away from Genesis. For the first time in 5 years, Genesis held someone's gaze without flinching. What other abilities was Genesis hiding? And could she survive what came next? The yacht's engines thrummed beneath Genesis's feet as she returned to her duties, but the world had shifted. She could feel eyes following her now, whispers trailing in her wake. Soraya wasted no time weaponizing curiosity into cruelty. By morning, gossip spread through the yacht. Genesis heard it in fragments, whispers that she'd manipulated Thomas, that she'd fabricated her credentials, that she was a gold digger using her tragic single mother story to trap a wealthy CEO. Genesis tried to ignore it. But when she overheard 2 junior crew members laughing, can you believe she thought people would actually respect her? Something inside her cracked. She locked herself in the supply closet and allowed herself 3 minutes to cry. Then she washed her face, straightened her uniform, and returned to work. Because that's what survivors did. Meanwhile, Brennan found himself distracted. Twice he caught himself searching for Genesis. Once, while Soraya complained about the yacht's wine selection, he simply walked away toward where Genesis was polishing brass fixtures. Ms. Carter, do you have a moment? Genesis's hands stilled. Of course, Mr. Hayes. Call me Brennan. He gestured toward the railing. I reviewed your personnel file. Everything checks out. Your father was Marcus Carter. He brought my father's fleet through a typhoon in 2003. Saved 17 crew members. Genesis's throat tightened. You knew my dad. Of him. My father said Marcus Carter could navigate by starlight alone. Brennan paused. Why didn't you tell anyone who your father was? His name carries weight. Because I'm not my father. I'm just his daughter. And daughters don't inherit respect, they have to earn it. Except no one will give me the chance. She met his eyes. You've passed me in hallways for 18 months, Brennan. You never once asked my name. Brennan's jaw tightened. You're right. I stopped looking at people closely after my wife left. It seemed safer. Your wife was the blonde woman in the photograph, the one you keep face down. Brennan's eyes widened. How did you know? I clean your office 3 times a week. I notice things even when people assume I'm invisible. Genesis's voice held no judgment. We're not so different. We both learned that being seen can lead to pain. Before Brennan could respond, Soraya's voice cut through the moment. There you are, Brennan. The photographer is waiting. You promised. She linked her arm through his possessively. Surely the cleaning can wait. Genesis stepped back. I should go. Genesis, Brennan started, but she was already walking away. That evening, the alarm shrieked. Not the medical alarm, the emergency alarm. Genesis reached the bridge at a run. Derek, the acting first officer, stood frozen at the weather display. What's happening? Derek's voice shook. Captain Reed collapsed again. Emergency surgery. And now this. He pointed at the radar. Typhoon Kestrel changed course overnight. We're direct